Welcome, Dr. Guangyu Qiao-Franco and Dr. Rogier Creemers. We're here to learn more about your new reports called Understanding China's Export Controls. So my first question to you is, what exactly are export controls and how has their application and use evolved?
To put it simply, export controls refer to government rules that restrict what companies, universities, individuals, and other entities can sell or share transfer to other countries, especially related to items that can implicate national security, military capabilities, and also some strategic industries. So they can apply to physical products, but also technical data, know-how, and so on. I just can give you some simple examples. For example, Netherlands applies export controls on semiconductors or semiconductor-related equipment on China, and then also similarly, China is using export controls to manage who can access its rare earths. And indeed, it's right that the application of export controls has evolved over time. Historically, export controls played an important role during the Cold War, and then mainly used by Western countries to restrict advanced technologies from the communist countries. But however, after Cold War, there's export controls maintain a very narrow scope, mainly related to non-proliferation of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. But in recent years, the scope and the purpose of export controls have greatly expanded, and export controls now are increasingly applied to high-tech sectors, emerging technologies, and even materials and components in the upstream supply chains, for example, critical minerals. And then they're also not only used for non-proliferation purposes, but also for managing economic security, technological competition, and also other strategic concerns.
Okay, then how would you characterize Chinese export controls? Would you characterize them as more reactive, proactive, or as a combination of both?
Yeah. China's export controls remain largely reactive. And then I think if you look at the rhetoric, especially the government rhetoric, and then they still phrase export controls as defensive measures. And then it also reflects the approach of how its export controls are developed. And then overall that this export control evolved from just ad hoc retaliatory measures against foreign imposed export controls, especially those applied by the United States. However, recent developments signal a shift. It's now getting increasingly more proactive, as we see in cases of its use against Japan, and then in the rare earth sector, and then so showcasing a valueness, increasing valueness to use export controls more for more strategic security and development interests, and then also, in short, to be becoming more proactive in a way, in a sense.
All right. We would also be very keen to hear what the main conclusions are that are being drawn in the reports.
Yeah. So first of all, China's export controls are just a part of a global transformation that's going on, and then so we are now witnessing a world that is moving towards increasing protectionism, fragmentation, securitization, and then China's export controls are just a response and also part of this broader shift. But of course, China's export controls have their unique characteristics, and then as mentioned before, that it's developed in a reactive manner as retaliatory measures against the U.S. and also other countries' export controls, despite being used more proactively in recent years. And then also China's export controls usually often applied beyond this formal export control framework. For example, closely linked to its industry policy, data security policy, science and technology policy, and national security policy as well. And then so finally, I want to add that China still has to balance this the need to protect its trade interests, given that its status as a major export economy, and the need to protect the security in the environment of intensified geopolitical competition. So this creates incentives for China to avoid over-restrict.
Thank you so much, Guangyu. How would you say that European governments should be responding to Chinese export controls? What should they be doing next?
Well, at the very least, they should be getting a lot more situational awareness about the state of the world that we live in. We've gone from a situation where international trade and unfettered international trade was the organizing principle of global affairs. Those days are over. And governments like China are essentially following the lead of the United States in terms of weaponizing interdependencies and embarking upon economic warfare. So what I think European governments need to do is, in a situation where the openness of trade no longer is a given, they should be thinking long and hard about where Europe's interest lies and how we can coordinate forces within Europe to get there as effectively as possible.
Thank you. And then how would you say that this report is also relevant for the broader public and industry?
Well, certainly for industry, as I said, we live in a world where it is not going to be as easy as it used to be to have access to global trading flows and global resources and global financial flows and all the rest of it, or global markets for that matter. And so I expect that every globally trading company is going to have to come up with an export control related compliance regime. That is going to be true in Europe, but it's also going to be true from the side of China. And so companies and the people working within them would be well helped by having more information that allows them to better foresee the situations that they're going to be confronted with.